Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Unleashing Potentials podcast. So joining me today is special guest Jill. Jill, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
How are you?
I am amazing. It's beautiful where I live, and I'm just happy to be invited so I can share my story to help people. So thank you for having me today.
You're welcome. I'm so excited to have you. But before we start, I want to let my listeners know, whether they're watching or listening, that some of the topics we're going to talk about are triggering. And obviously, we all do healing differently. We're at different stages. Please, if you do find this triggering, go listen to a different episode until you're ready to face that part and the healing process with it. That being said, Jill, please tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, my name is Jill Schultz, and I am a serial entrepreneur. I am 55 years old. I am single. I'm looking for love. Wink, wink. And I am self-proclaiming myself the most eligible bachelorette in the United States right now. And I'm blessed to have, I have 4 businesses, and I'm blessed to have, work that I love. I have an event company. I have a wine business. I do vacation rentals. And now my newest is my book, and really sharing my story and getting on stages to help set people free from the shame that they've lived under or lived with for a long time, or maybe not a long time, but just to let go of shame.
Wow, I love that. I love that so much. So Jill, can you take us back to where everything started?
Yes. And if you don't mind, I want to just take a minute and just take a moment to acknowledge your audience, because this is a topic that people are not talking about. And I'm so grateful for the brave souls that came before with the Me Too movement. And now, they're shining the light on sex trafficking. So I feel like it's easier for people to have this conversation right now. But if this is your story, and if you're hearing it for the first time, if you're remembering it for the first time, if you're remembering it, because I feel like sexual trauma comes in waves, you'll remember it and then you forget it and then you remember it. So if this is you, just know that I so feel you, and you get to forgive yourself, you get to love yourself. And if at any time, as Bernadette mentioned, if you're feeling triggered at all, I do have a resource section on my website. It's jilleschultz.com, where people can go and get anonymous help and talk to somebody. It's really important to me that people are protected during this whole process. So
thank you, Jill. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. So that being said, I was molested when I was about 3 or 4 years old. And sadly, this is not a new story. It's very common. But what isn't being talked about is how I acted out because of what somebody taught me to do, what somebody showed me to do. And so I was a little girl in between the ages of about 7 and 12 who was experimenting sexually with other children because somebody showed me to do that. And I lived with the most debilitating shame for 41 years. And so, it's my life's purpose and my mission now to vulnerably share my story, and hope that, if this is you, you realize you're not alone. You get to love yourself. You get to forgive yourself. You get to get help. You get to say it out loud. And you get to live a beautiful life, because life is really unbelievable on the other side of healing from all that trauma. So that's me in a nutshell. I know it's kind of a bold conversation to just kind of let all over everybody.
Oh, I love bold. That is the purpose of the podcast, to come open as you just shared. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so grateful for powerful women like you that are giving pain, shame, guilt, and that are giving us a voice. Maybe not every woman is speaking about what happened to them, but there are many of us like you and me that are right there holding their hands and speaking for those who could not speak then or now. So thank you. Let's talk about sexual trauma, as a culture, a society, how we don't, like you said, we don't talk about it. And because we don't talk about it enough, it feels normal when it's not. It's very messed up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was sharing with you earlier, I didn't start talking about it until I was 33. I'm 55 now. I didn't start talking until I was 33. And a couple of things. First of all, the reason that I went to therapy was because I wasn't connecting with men. That was one of the first things that I noticed,
Mm-hmm.
that I wasn't connecting with men. A man would walk in the room and he would look at me and I would immediately look down. And I really did not want a man to see me, because I thought, if a man sees me, how could a man love me if he knew what I had done?
Mm-hmm.
And now I get to say, how can a man not love me, knowing what I have accomplished and knowing what I have gotten through and knowing what I'm creating now? So, but I remember, and for those of you who are listening right now and this is coming up for you, I know that you are sitting there with this unbelievable knot in your stomach and you're just like, oh my God, how could I even think about telling somebody? And when I went into therapy, I was like, how can I even say these words out loud? This man is going to think I'm a monster. He's going to think I was a pedophile, because that's what I was thinking. I thought as a little girl I was a monster and a pedophile because of what I had done. And every single time I've shared my story since then, and in the last year and a half, I've shared it a lot, through writing the book. I've written a book to help people with healing around this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable experience around the kindness and the compassion
Mm-hmm.
and the love and the understanding every single time I've shared my story. So I want you to know that whatever you have made up in your head about how people are going to react when you tell your story is 100% made up. Like, you will be blown away by the love that is on the other end of that ear. Find somebody safe to tell that story to, and you'll be surprised at how compassionate people are.
Yeah, yeah. Excuse me. Oftentimes, fear does hold us back, and guilt hold us back as well.
Yeah.
And you were so young when it happened.
Yeah.
And can I say me too?
Yeah.
Because me too.
I
It
know.
happened when I was young. It happened by family members. It happened in adulthood. And your experience while you were sharing about men, that's exactly how I felt. I felt like I was disgusting. Who's going to love this? Because I didn't love myself. How can someone love me if I don't love myself? So, me too. And thank you.
Mm.
Hmm. And what was your childhood like? Because you were so young, very, very young.
Yeah. So I don't know if I mentioned this. I don't remember who did it. And I think that I'm 99% sure it was probably somebody very close to me, because
Um,
therapists will tell you, if you really have hidden it, it's because it was probably somebody that you trusted and you loved.
mm,
Um, I feel like I had a very normal childhood. I have two beautiful parents. I have five brothers and sisters. I
mhm,
feel like my childhood was really, really normal. I think it was when I started getting into my teens that I and realized what I was doing was wrong. That's when the guilt and the shame really set in for me. And
mhm,
I equate it to having a dark cloud. Like, I always have this dark cloud following me around. And it reminds me of like Pigpen from Snoopy. He's got just a
mhm,
Tasmanian devil dirt around him all the time. And I had this dark cloud. I would wake up, it would be there. I would go to sleep, it would be there. And
mhm,
now I look for it and it's gone. And it's amazing to me, because now I just have this beautiful blank canvas of what I get to create in my life, because
mhm,
that shame, that self-loathing, that guilt is it's not there anymore.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. And those are very common and healthy emotions to have and to feel. That's what I want to also echo out to people, because they separate those feelings as if it's them who's a bad person. And sometimes when those things happen, they're not in our control, especially as kids. And it happens to us by people we trust and love. If I may ask, what are some signs that either parents in the home or family members should look for when it comes to sexual trauma between kids?
Yeah, I love that you're asking this question, because my therapist has actually written a chapter in my book that talks about my nose just itches, what sign to look for and how to talk to your children when they're little, so
Yeah.
that they're not targets. We think, the birds and the bees, you have that conversation one time. Well, a child has to do math over and over and over and over again to learn it. So something that's as important as this, you need to be having this conversation over and over and over again. And at the level that they can understand. Obviously, when they're little, you talk about it a certain way. As they start getting older, you talk about it a different way. But it's really important to have those conversations so that they set boundaries with adults, because what will happen is whoever is abusing the child will typically groom them. And with the grooming process, it could be anything from having a child sit on their lap and brushing their hair, so the child gets comfortable sitting on their lap.
Mhm.
But some of the signs, there are several ways that kids or adults will act out because of sexual trauma.
Mhm.
One is self-harming, so cutting.
Yeah.
Another is alcohol abuse. You've got drug abuse, sexual promiscuity. You have a binging, bulimia, and anorexia. And I was bulimic until I was 41 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. That was the second time I went back to therapy, because I'm like, if I don't get this under control, I am going to die.
Mm.
And then with smaller children, once they have already been potty trained, there's several different things to look at. I'm
Mhm.
gonna try and remember all of them. And it's not if one thing occurs, it's if three or more of these are happening, then it's probably an indication that something has happened. So if they've been potty trained and they continue to, or they maybe start urinating again, or if they start defecating after they've been potty trained out of the blue, if they have fear of going to a particular place, like maybe they used to love to go to grandma and grandpa's and now they throw a massive fit. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Another is if they're exposing themselves when they're out in public, or if they're trying to have other children touch them, or if they're touching other children. Those are some of the signs, but you have to make sure that there's three. So if your child is saying, no, 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 I don't want to go to grandpa and grandpa's, don't assume that there's been abuse there. But, just be prepared and looking for those types of things
Mhm.
if they're coming in threes.
Mhm. Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'll edit that part out. I've been talking my throat. It's dry. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And also I think it's important to teach kids about body parts.
Mhm.
I'm from a different culture where we don't really talk about that kind of stuff, yet we do. It made
Yeah.
no sense to me. It still doesn't. Um, what are some key signs that parents should look for when their kids are ready to learn about their body parts and what they do?
Well, kids will automatically start talking about,
Mhm.
but this is another sign too. A little girl's going to call it pee-pee, right? If they start calling it more elaborate names, it's and you need to be talking about their private parts with the real words, not cutesy, you're tinkly too, or I don't know, I just made that up.
Mhm.
Use actual words for vagina and penis when you're talking to your children. I'm sorry, I just lost what your question was. I'm sorry.
um, how parents can teach their kids about the parts and use, like you said, use the real names.
Yeah, using the real names. And another question that comes up a lot too is, when should I stop bathing with my child? And
Mhm.
when your child starts noticing that you are different than them. So, mommy, why do you have hair there?
Yeah,
Those types of questions, when they start asking those types of questions, it's time for you to have them be bathing
yeah,
separately from you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, why do you think it's important to get professional help versus a friend or neighbor? Obviously, with professional help, you get the help that you need. They're trained. Why do you think it's
Are
important
you,
for you to do that?
yeah. Are you talking about if your child's molested or as an adult
Oh,
or both?
can we do both if you
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
mind?
yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of the same answer. You're not a
Yeah,
therapist. You're not trained. In fact, I'm not
yeah,
trained to
yeah.
help somebody in that
Me
capacity, which
neither.
is why I have the resources that I have available, because,
Yeah.
I'm an expert by experience, but I'm not a therapist.
Mhm.
So, and especially if your child has been abused, you need to get to therapy immediately. You need to get them talking to somebody, and you want to make sure that whoever they're speaking to is somebody that this is what they specialize in. Ask a lot of questions. Ask how many other children they've treated that they've had this sort of situation. You want to make sure that person is extremely qualified to be treating your child.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing. I went to child therapy for sexual abuse. Most people don't know now. They know. Hey, and it was something that happened right away. My adoptive mom, I was adopted, and they got me there right away because they knew of the history, and they are helpful. I said I want to talk to a woman, and that happened, and they respected my boundaries even though I was young. So
Yeah.
I think those also count as well. Um, what are some signs as adults when things are not going good and we're not seeing them, but people say, hey, something's
Yeah.
different. Maybe it's a partner or mom or family member.
Yeah. Well, when you're not setting good boundaries with people, you know, that's definitely something to be aware of. When you don't have healthy relationships with other people, if you're overusing alcohol, if you're, if you're numbing with those types of things, if you are cutting, if you're suffering from eating disorders, like I said, I was 41 when I addressed my eating disorder. So those are some of the things to look for. And if you have a friend that you're worried about,
Mhm.
you can talk to them, but make sure that they get professional help too, because you're not a therapist.
Yeah,
You're not
often we
qualified.
can, yeah, we think we can fix other people when really, I don't think any of us are, but obviously we can be part of their healing journey, but not do it for them. I don't think
Yeah.
that's possible for someone to heal for someone.
Yeah, no, and on that same line of conversation, don't make their appointments for them either. Unless they absolutely cannot do it. If they say to you, I'm really struggling making an appointment, can you help me with that? But don't enable them. They need to be taking those steps for themselves. You can help them find somebody, but don't be, stepping in and taking control of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, let's talk about, being in relationships could be with either gender. When we fear what the person may think of our bodies and how we look, we just make up all those things in our minds. When the person has true intention, they say they love you, and we don't believe it. I'll speak for myself. I've been in that situation. I just don't trust and don't feel what they're saying.
Yeah. Well, number one, a man does not care what you look like. I promise you that.
Uh,
I'm sorry, but if there's boobs, they are all in it. So it's true. Most men could care less what you look like. And it's our hangups that hold us back from that, right? We all have our insecurities with our bodies.
Mhm.
Um, but emotionally, you're right. When you find somebody that wants to make sure that you're comfortable and lets you know that they cherish you, and asks you questions about how you're feeling and really wants to communicate with you, that's when you have that right person. If it's somebody that's disrespecting you and making you feel bad, or not treating you the way that you as a princess get to be treated,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, when there's sexual trauma that's involved, our self-esteem is so low that sometimes we'll just take whatever we can get,
Mhm.
and you deserve to have beautiful, beautiful love. And until you can forgive yourself, and until you can love yourself,
Mhm.
that person is going to be harder to come along. And honestly, I mentioned that I'm 55 and I'm single, and I'm really grateful now. I've wanted love in my life, my entire life. I've waited and waited and waited and waited. I'm like, God, when is this person coming for me? But
Mhm.
I'm so grateful that it has happened the way that it's happened, because now I know me. Like, I really know me, and I really love me, and I know what I deserve. So
Mhm.
that person that I'm calling in now is going to be a completely different person than what I would have called in when I was in shame, and that's not to say that you can't find a beautiful love if you haven't healed. But for me, I believe that I would probably be divorced now if I had gotten married at a younger age when I was
Yeah.
still doing my own healing. But
Yeah.
that's my story. Like I said, I believe you can still
Yeah.
find a beautiful man
Mhm.
if you,
Yeah. Yeah.
haven't healed.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. For some of us, we look for love in all the wrong places. And sometimes we do get warnings and little triggers here and there. This is a bad idea, but we
Yeah.
wait
Success
until
leaves clues. Success leaves clues. Pay
Mhm,
attention to them.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Um, let's turn it to self-love
Okay.
because we can't love other people if we don't love ourselves. I don't care
Yeah.
who you are. You say you don't love yourself, and then you're trying to love other people. How can we love ourselves? For those who've experienced very similar things like you and I have.
Yeah, well, you get to take the steps to heal. And there's lots of different ways that you can do that. There's lots of different therapies and modalities out there right now. And
Mhm,
there are ways that can get you to that end game quicker than what I experienced. I feel like traditional therapy doesn't always work because you're in therapy for 20 years talking about the same thing and not getting past it. So, there are other ways that you can get healing quickly. I do have a couple of worksheets, and I think the links are in here. One is to help you uncover your shame. So if you are trying to figure out what it is that you're ashamed of, and you know what, it might not be related to sexual trauma. Everybody has a secret.
mhm,
Everybody has a secret. Maybe you cheated on a spouse. This worksheet will help you uncover that. And then I have 7 steps
mhm,
to start healing. And, some of those steps are, you need to acknowledge that it happened, and you need to forgive the other person, not for them, but for you. And
mhm,
you need to own it. And when I say own it, you don't take responsibility for what happened to you. You get to take responsibility for where you are in your life right now. And you get to look it in the eye and say, you do not own me anymore.
mhm,
I get to live a beautiful life. I get to forgive myself. So,
mhm.
um, you there's, like I said, 7 steps that I go through in one of my worksheets to help you start that. But still finding somebody to talk to, find somebody that you feel safe with. And if it just from the very beginning is you journaling about it, or maybe you say it in the mirror, you've got to get it out of your body.
Mhm, mhm. Let's focus a little bit on education
Okay.
because it looks different. We perceive sexual education differently based on our experiences. I've heard quite a bit of sexual abuse or whatever they call it at work, and it's professionals. Uh, I'm like speechless trying to mumble and put everything together because there's too much of it. It shouldn't be happening at all. No one deserves to face what they face at work. I don't care what type of work they do. We should feel safe, heard, understood at work, and protected.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not the case for everyone. What are your take on that?
Well, I'm so grateful, as I mentioned earlier, for the Me Too movement. I'm so grateful for those original people that stepped in who are brave and courageous to
Mm,
start this conversation happening. Um, God, that's such a hard one. I have a friend, and she actually has written a chapter in my book, and she had a terrible time at work, really, really awful time. And she would even talk to her supervisors. She would talk to HR, and nobody was helping her.
wow.
So I wish I had a definitive answer for that. I don't.
Mm, mhm.
And it's easy to say, get a new job, but that's not always
Yeah.
easy,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, what I will say is you get to set boundaries.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
um, one of the things, and this even happened recently to me, I had somebody working in my house, and I had known him for quite some time,
Mhm.
been doing some handyman stuff for me, and he was always inappropriate with me, always.
Mm,
And I would always be like, oh, knock it off, don't do
mm,
that. Instead of being like, I do not like it when you talk to me like that. I don't like it when you act like that. And there was an incident where he nearly assaulted me, and I kicked him really hard. I did a roundhouse and kicked him in the ribs. But I think the first thing to do is just set those boundaries and say, I don't like it when.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Don't play around. Don't be like, oh, don't do that. Because that isn't setting a boundary,
Yeah.
and go to your superiors. And hopefully, because of all the things that have happened in our world in the last, since the Me Too movement, hopefully people are taking more responsibility and being more proactive for employees in that space.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my hope. Because I think companies, they should do their job by protecting their employees. And also, I know within governments and the work they're doing quite a bit. Is it enough? I don't know. There could be more. And I think it's important for those people in power to really listen to the victims instead of making decisions for them. That's my view, because if someone hasn't been through something, why are they deciding for those who are suffering?
Yeah.
It never made sense to me. Why? Why not have those people come and have their ideas and hear from them, hear their stories, as hard as it may be, and ask them, what type of resources would you like? How can I better support you where
Yeah.
you are?
Yeah.
Right? And just to listen to people, because every single sexual trauma or things we've been through, it's different. It may have the same title, the same name. We don't experience it the same
Yeah.
at all, at all. Yeah. Um, why is it important to keep talking about this?
Oh, well, for me, I'm creating a movement. Like I am creating a movement, and I just want to shout my story from the rooftops
Mm,
to know that people get to be set free from all the pain. I was in so much pain for so long. It didn't just affect me in my relationships.
mhm,
And I would say, I don't know that it has affected me in relationships with females. I've always had very close friends, but my
mm,
relationships with men, and it's affected me in my business. I never felt worthy to have, even though I think if somebody else was looking from outside and saw what I've created, they would think that there was a lot of success there. But I had so many more things that I wanted to do in the way of scaling my business. And,
mhm,
then you come up against imposter syndrome. And
mm,
so, yeah, I'm just grateful that now looking at it, I know that I deserve to have
mm,
those things. I know that I get to have success in my life. And
mhm,
I don't know that we talked about this, but I believe in God. If you don't, that's okay. But I believe, and maybe you call it source or universe or whatever.
mhm,
Um, but I believe that everything on our heart was given to us by God. Every desire that you have was given to you by
yeah,
God. And it's your only job every single day to know that you get to have that. I'm really into manifesting. And I heard this from a woman named Amanda Francis. It's your only job every single day to feel what it feels like to have that and know that you get to have that. And
mhm,
I have some big goals on my vision board. Like I have some big dreams, but you know, write down 5 things that you really want and know that you actually get to have those things.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, I love that. Speaking of writing down, some people journal, some really don't like to journal. Um, I guess for people to find outlets that works for them. What
Yeah.
have been some of your outlets throughout your life?
Yeah, I don't like to journal either.
Or
I don't
I
like to,
don't need, I paint.
I,
These are my painting. I just paint.
and they're beautiful, by the way.
Thank
Yeah. And I don't like to read either. So anything that I do is on Audible. Like it is.
you.
For me, music is a huge outlet for me. Like I just am able to be free. And, when so going to concerts is like a huge thing for me, or just my neighbors probably hate me because I've got to be the loudest one on the block because I'm always cranking my music. That has been an outlet for me. And joining, so I've done 2 different group, transformational work. I did landmark education, and then I recently did this one called Heartcore Leadership. And
Mhm.
Heartcore Leadership was really the final catalyst to be getting my final self-love and healing. And I don't know if it's because it's such a powerful program, or if that's when I was just really ready to finally step into to to my purpose. But find different organizations. And my largest healing has come from groups. Like when I'm in a group setting, I have way more quicker healing than I've had in just like a one-on-one setting. And I think it's because you get to see that other people are like you. When I was doing one of my programs, they asked how many people had been sexually abused. 80% raised their hand.
Wow.
Out of 100 people, 80% raised their hand, and it was men and women. So to know that you're in a space where there's other people like you opens up a completely different level of vulnerability for yourself to share and to get that story out. And knowing that you have support of other people and love and kindness and all of that.
Yeah. I just came up with a new hashtag for men as you were talking. Men too.
Oh,
Men
wow.
too.
I just got full body chills.
Men too, because we don't talk about men. We don't see men. I am not a man. I don't want to be a man, but I sympathize because I know men that were boys that their innocence were taken from them way too young. Never should have happened. The picture that society paints is men don't hurt like women do. Men shouldn't feel pain. They should be tough. When really, like, they're human. Why can't they cry? Why can't they feel? And why can't they share and talk? And sometimes I think when men try to share, they get shamed because a woman's more sensitive. And how dare they talk about it? So that's my perspective.
There are 3 men who contributed to my book. So I've written 2 chapters in the book. The rest are other people who have either my story, or like I said, the therapist has written a chapter, or people who have forgiven when they've been hurt. And the end of the book is really about, you get to live a beautiful life. You get to, live the life of your dreams. But I really feel like sometimes this is more taboo for men to talk about, because the men that are in my book struggled with their sexuality. They thought they were gay, and there's nothing wrong if you are gay. These particular men are not. And they really struggled with that because of what had happened to them when they were little. And I'll tell you what, a vulnerable man is sexy AF. Like a man that is in touch with his feelings.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Call me.
Yeah, I'm attracted to that. And a man who can't put their walls down, don't bother. I'm not interested. But if a man can be man enough to talk about their feelings, to feel, to cry,
oh,
I love
sexy,
that. It's contagious.
Sexy. And if you can cook.
Oh yeah, that too. That too. Yeah. Let's talk about your book. You've mentioned some stories, how you collaborate with other people, but tell me more. Why did you write a book?
I didn't want to. I did not want to write a book at all. So a couple years ago, I had shared. What's that?
It's too late.
Too late. Yeah, no. And now I'm so proud of it. But
a
couple years ago, I was sharing my story with one of the people in my coaching community, and he's like, "You need to write a book." And I told him to.
Yeah.
Instead of me swearing, I literally said,
Yeah.
And then as I was healing and as my purpose became more clear, I just wanted to shout it from the rooftops. Like I mentioned earlier, I just wanted to tell my story so I could help people get past all the pain. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's an international speaker, and he's like, if you want to get on stages, you got to write a book. And I was like, oh. But the book happened so beautifully because I really started sharing my story, and the number of people that were like, that's me too, or it just organically happened. So there's about 15 other people who have written in the book, and I'm so proud of it because I really feel like it's for anybody. Number one, like I talk about God, but there's lots of other modalities in the book. So if you don't believe in God, but you really want to get healing, read the book, because there are other people in there that have different views than I do. And, I just want people to be able to see more than anything that you're not alone, because I felt like I was alone for so long. So that's really the purpose of this book, is to share that other people have similar stories to you and their path to getting past the pain and to healing and living a beautiful, beautiful life.
Mhm. I never asked, what's the title of your book?
I was just thinking that it's called Liberated, Releasing the Dark Cloud of Shame. And it's going to be
Wow.
out November 1st. Yeah, I'm so, so, so proud. This has been definitely a labor of love and
Mhm.
pain and resistance and surrender. Surrender is my word for the year, because all I've done is I'm like, all right, if you need this book, God, then you figure it out.
Mhm.
And if you want me to be the vehicle that all this happens through, you figure out all the hard stuff. I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward. And I can't tell you how beautifully the path has been paved
Mhm.
just by doing that. And it's the hardest thing to do. But once you do it and once you see the benefits of surrendering, it's kind of addictive. It's
Oh,
kind of
I
like,
believe you. I'm in
let
that
go.
space. I'm just flying.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, where can my listeners find you and support your work?
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, my website is JillESchultz.com, and you can see my name on the screen, JillESchultz.com. And that's where you're going to find the resource section for getting help. And I have different podcasts and different things. I actually am starting to do my song of the week, because I'm so on fire for music that I like to, it really lights me up to share that with people. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, Jill E. Schultz. And then my Facebook group, I'd love for people to join the Facebook group, because it's a community. I remember I said that I got most of my healing in group.
Mhm.
Like, this is a place where you can come and be with other people. And it's called Living Unshamed is the name of the Facebook group.
Wow. You come up with beautiful names. What's your inspiration? Obviously, it's what you've been through. What else?
Yeah, I would love to take all the credit in the world for that, but that is the hardest thing in my life to do, is come up with names. Like, all my businesses have been named by other people. My ghostwriter came up with Unshamed, because that's what I
Wow.
wanted the book title to be, but the publisher didn't like it. They didn't think that it was going to land to get the reach that I needed to get. So they came up with Liberated. So I haven't done any of that. None of that's me.
That's so cool. I'm the opposite. I have too many. With the podcast, I'm like, aha, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's so cool. So what's next in your journey?
I'm very excited. Now that the book is done, now that the book is coming out, I get to get on stages and speak. So I'm looking for stages to speak on right now. And that can be a number of different topics. It can be, my story doesn't have to just be about healing from sexual trauma. My story also gets to be about resiliency and looking at the hard things in life and facing them head on, or being a powerful business person by letting go of your secrets. So there's lots of different ways that I can share my story and empower people to be their best selves.
Mhm. That's awesome. What are some key takeaways that you want audience to get just from this episode in your story?
I love this question, and I always answer it the same way.
Mhm.
Life happens outside your comfort zone.
Ooh, I love
Look at the hardest thing in your life.
that.
Look it dead in the eyes, grab it by the horns, and say, you don't own me anymore. And do whatever you have to do to get help, because shame cannot live in the light.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And fear
Yeah.
hold people back from accessing and getting
And
help.
it's never what you think it is. It never is. You always go to worst case scenario,
Mhm.
which, use that to your benefit. Be like, okay, that's worst case. I know that is not what's going to happen. It's going to be better than that. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. One last question for you.
Yes.
What is the meaning of life for you?
Helping people.
Mm, I love that. What
Yeah.
do you get from helping people?
Oh, it's selfish. It makes me feel good. Like, it really makes me feel good, whether it's a financial give, or whether it's me sharing my story. Whenever I get feedback from people that my story, it's, oh my God, it lights me up. It is 100% selfish.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much for being selfish today. I feel the love and everything from your story.
Thank you.
And yeah, it inspires me to continue to talk about that and to reach other women. And I thank you for reaching women all over the world, probably, and from different backgrounds. And we all one at the end of the day, and we all feel. So I thank you.
Thank you. It was so lovely being here today with you.
Come back anytime.
I will. Let's do it.
Amen.
Okay.
Thank you.